Hello, my name is James, and thank you very much for attending this webinar. So today, we will look into mode as well as how mode works with Chartio. So before we begin, we just wanted to highlight a few things. So one, we have a huge list of companies that currently work with us and many that are actually coming over from Chartio. So this is quite an apt discussion that really kind of is quite timely for both mode and customers who unfortunately, starting with March 1, had to begin to migrate their platform. So with that, let's get into the actual transition process. So first, it's one of those things that's always important to be absolutely honest at the front. So it is currently a manual process. And by manual process, it does involve essentially going into Chartio and copying and pasting the SQL query. That's copying and pasting the SQL query from Chartio into mode. And I always think it's important to set expectations right at the start, just so that people really know what they're getting into. But that being said, I also think it's very important to let people know the environment that they're moving to and the reason why it's such an incredible benefit to move and migrate all of your information from Chartio to mode. So the way to understand this, and the best way to understand this, is really looking at first what makes Chartio special, and then saying, okay, what makes mode special, and what can customers expect when they do the transition? Now, not all customers will enjoy the actual process of the different ways in which our two companies operate. But that being said, a significant number of people will find mode to be a lot more usable and a lot more flexible in the long run, especially if you are a data-focused analyst team. So looking into what makes Chartio special. So they have something called the visual SQL. And what this essentially is, if you can see in the blue box, it allows you to construct SQL queries without having to know SQL directly. And this is an extremely, extremely powerful tool if you are a business user. However, if you are a standard SQL user or someone who is SQL curious, you may actually find it to be a little bit limiting compared to what you are capable of when you work from a normal standard SQL editor. Now, the benefits of this is that one, it is again very useful for a code-free environment for business users, and two, it also helps you with dashboarding tools and helps users to explore their data and create their own SQL queries. However, now that Chartio is sunsetting due to the Atlassian acquisition, we now have an opportunity to move from former competitors to friends. And we have a lot of features that business users of Chartio will absolutely love when they migrate to the mode ecosystem. But first, let's get into now why mode is special. So number one, we have approached analytics software and the realization that there are three main issues that we really need to address to really benefit business users and analysts who are answering complex questions every day. So first is the realization that one, research isn't linear. So when you are doing data investigations, you will often have to answer one question and then realize that opens you up to a whole series of new questions. And that is something that a data analyst and business users and data scientists encounter on a regular basis. And when we created our product, that was something that we took into consideration. And two, analysts can't do their work in a single tool. So even when you think in terms of Chartio, right, someone still has to, on the data analyst side, prepare that data either from ETL, from straight up creating the SQL query for more advanced applications of data gathering and pooling. And it often requires pulling things from multiple software packages like Jupyter, like Excel, like your preferred SQL editor. And it's just really difficult to do everything in a single tool. And three, so analysts and business users have two very different workflows. So Chartio was made primarily for business users, which is absolutely terrific, but it's not as helpful for analysts. So the disparity between these does create a little bit of tension for people who are a little bit more SQL curious and analyst focused versus people who are more on the business user side. And so with that, we have mode. And why are we special? Because we created a platform that unites both aspects of this analytics and BI workflow into a single platform. So we're now going to give a quick review of the basics of the things that you should look out for. We have all of our main features here. We're only going to highlight a few. So the first being our cloud-based SQL editor. That's where when you are creating your SQL queries, you have the ability to really have that high level of customization as an analyst. And for business users, we also have definitions, which I'll get into in the demo, that would allow you to actually come in and use pre-made SQL queries for things that are very common applications that you would encounter from the business user side. Next, we have reports and dashboards. So reports and dashboards, this is one of the things that people absolutely love about our platform, and that comes up in Chartio as well. So we wanted to make sure to highlight where there's a lot of overlap, as well as highlighting the benefits of mode and how deep you can use mode to actually go into iterative analysis. And second, or rather third, we have exploration and core concepts. So with exploration and core concepts, again, this is something that is an extension of the dashboard that allows you to really dig deep into the platform from a business user side. And finally, with embedded visualizations, it allows you to take your results, productize it for your team, and shoot it out to customers and other people who could certainly benefit from having those insights. So what does this mean for you? One, in comparison to Chartio, we are a fast and complete solution. So you don't have to switch between a lot of tools between the analyst and business user workflow. Everything is in one platform. And two, we are flexible and familiar. So Visual SQL, excellent tool, but it's also a proprietary tool that translates SQL in this sort of intermediary fashion. With us, you can write SQL directly in and get the results that you need, especially using our feature of definitions. And finally, everything is collaborative and centralized. That means that you can go through your entire cloud analytics workflow in a single tool, and you can actually pass the information to stakeholders quite quickly. So with that, we're going to migrate just a second over into the demo. So please give me an opportunity to switch the screens. Excellent. So right now you are viewing the Chartio page. So the first thing that we want to do is really cover how you actually migrate the queries from one platform to another. So to do this in Chartio, they're really, again, it's a very manual process. So let's say we wanted to go here, edit chart data. Here is the Visual SQL queue. So with this Visual SQL queue, this is essentially constructing a SQL query on the back end. But if you go here, you can actually copy and paste the SQL query. So we're going to go here and then go to our mode app. So this is mode. And before we really get into a lot of the specifics, let's do some pretty quick adjusting here to make sure that we're on our demo platform. And now you are looking at mode. Very frequently, you'll go into our Discover page. And remember that we are still copying and pasting the SQL query from one to another, but we're going to do a quick review of what you're looking at right now. So over here, you have the plus button that opens up a new report. We'll get to that in a second. You also have our incredible training services that's used by organizations all over the world to help people learn how to write SQL. As well, if you click here, you have access to our support line available during business hours for business and enterprise users. Over here, you have our home page, and again, our Discover page, which allows you to use various templates to construct your analytics service or your analytic report. Collections is essentially where you store all of your information, and it's used very similar to like a Slack channel. So it's essentially a repository where you store your reports by team. And finally, definitions, which the best way to describe it is you write queries once. Oh, apologies. You write queries once, and then you can actually use it everywhere across your entire application. So let's go ahead and move over. So again, it is still a very much cut and paste process. And when you are migrating your code, you'll essentially have to do this each and every time. It's not something that's particularly ideal, but for us, we feel like the difference between the services really makes makes the benefit and the difference when you're talking about that analytics and business user workflow. So before, here we go. Before we really move on, let's go ahead and get awesome. Let's go ahead and see how mode works and how it's different. So again, if you were migrating your data over, you would copy and paste. And the most important thing before you do that is actually simply just connecting your databases. So of course, you would want to go here and make sure you have the correct database. In order to to connect your database, you essentially would have to go to this home page, go here, and connect the database. It's quite simple. Redshift, BigQuery, pretty much any standard database, you can connect it here and really get off and running pretty quickly with just a few basic admin credentials. But assuming you've already connected your database, let's get into an example of this live code session. So we ran it with this run button here. This is important because this is what we were talking about before. So this is definitions. And this is really going to be the thing that when you in practice are making that transition between Chartio and mode, this is going to be the thing that makes the difference. So you will have to have an analyst, if you're a business user, come in and write this code. But that being said, you only need to do it once, and then you can effectively make it into a definition and then use it in perpetuity as you go along. And if you need to go and make edits, again, the analyst can go in and make edits to that definition just by clicking the area right here. It opens up to this page right here, and they can make code changes here, which are then propagated throughout the entire area where that particular definition is used. So let's exit out here. Now we have this code. Really great, pretty standard stuff, pretty easy. Let's just say now we want to make a graph. We would have the ability to do that here. So over here, we have our dimensions and measures. Nothing too complicated. So let's go ahead for the x-axis, put date. And for the y-axis, let's put the number of units. And in this case, gloss units, we're talking about paper. It's just dummy data. No big deal, but we can see very quickly how we have made a graph. It's really that simple. And it's really something that also makes us very special here at Mode, in that we can have this ability for people to add data very quickly and use it in very similar fashion as you would with Excel. And on Excel, let's say you wanted to use a summation, for example, you could do that here, apply it. It adds that field right here. We're not going to use it. It was just sort of a silly dummy data that we used, but effectively it becomes something that you can use very similar again to Excel to create these aggregated columns. So with that, let's go ahead and take this one off and go to Report Builder. So with Report Builder, we have the ability to actually make this usable for our end users, our data customers. And let's say we wanted to go in and change the theme. We can do that right here. I particularly like this 80s theme, 88, just say 1988. Probably it's inspiration. And let's go ahead and retitle this report. Paper units. And now we have there we go. And now we have a report that's ready to be viewed by anyone in the organization. Interesting note, and it's a little bit of a small aside, but we just want to make sure we cover it because you have Visual SQL coming over from Chartio. That's something that a lot of users will use. And we expect people who are migrating over from Chartio to really focus on how people use SQL. But one thing that we're very proud of is our ability to have Python code. And for us, it's a very, very, very important point to be able to add this code and use it in a way that's flexible and familiar. For right now, we are not going to go into it as much simply because, you know, you guys are coming over from SQL and we want to make sure that things are a little bit even and not too scary at the front end, but certainly schedule a demo with one of our representatives, and we can help you get set up on how to use SQL and Python in the same report. But for now, we're going to go ahead, now that we have saved that report, we're going to go home. And we have paper units by day. And what we can do is move it to an appropriate folder. Let's go and move it to this demo test folder. It is in collections. And we have to wait. Sometimes it takes a little bit for it to propagate. There we are. And here we are. So it's really that simple in order to produce reports and as well make them visible by end users. In this case, we have our paper units by day as determined by gloss units. Now, how do we share this? We have a couple of ways. One, you can use the share link right here. So it saves it as a URL. Importantly, it's going to be available for people who have access to mode. So they'll need to have seats as always. That's always super important. And you can also share it by link, email. If you send it out by email, they can receive it in terms of a PDF or CSV file. Or if you are using Slack, you can certainly send it out through a Slack message on a set delivery schedule, which you can set here. To set up a delivery schedule, you can do it on daily, weekly, whatever your cadence is, and then you can make that determination right here. Create schedule, and then you're done. And finally, before we begin this presentation, we've covered a lot of the analyst workflow, and that is very important. Now we're getting a little bit into the tail end of how a business user and a data consumer would actually interact with mode. So you may notice that this is very, very similar to the chart when we were creating the code, and that is because it is very, very, very similar. However, for business users, this is an exploration. So that means that any change that you make on this side is not made to the original report. So this floats on top of the original report. So for example, if you wanted to change something, let's just say change the title, do something pretty unoriginal like title change, you can do that here. If you wanted to make it into a bar graph, you can do that here. And importantly, again, just to reemphasize this, any change that the business user makes here is not propagated to the final report. So with that, let's transition back to the demo screen and end out the presentation. And if you have any further questions, certainly put them in the chat box or connect with us after the presentation. So thank you very much for attending this webinar on migrating your data from Chartio to Mode. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to us at hi@menloanalytics.com. Again, that is hi@modeanalytics.com. We are looking forward to hearing from you and would love to begin to walk you through the process of how to migrate from Chartio to Mode. Thank you very much and have a good day.